Hello and welcome back to the third set of slides here for this week's lesson on business emails and business letters. And this reasonably short set is going to be showing you 10 ways to improve business writing. A lot of it is not rocket science. It is pretty straightforward. I just want to make sure that you are aware of these things. And the first one is to begin with a topic sentence, right? This may sound a little bit like RIT. If you took RIT in the first half of this year or earlier this year, a topic sentence is basically sort of an opening sentence to a paragraph that provides a kind of focus on the remaining sentences in the paragraph. So a good paragraph has unity in the sense that it discusses one idea, right? One topic clearly, concisely, and carefully, logically, and so on. But the topic sentence starts by stating the main idea. This is what this paragraph is going to talk about. And make it clear and concise and explicit so that the beginning of the paragraph indicates what is to come, right? What is going to be in the next section of the paragraph as it follows through. And a really good paragraph, and it doesn't matter where you're writing, whether you're writing an email, a letter, a book, it doesn't matter. Use a topic sentence in the very first part of the paragraph, the very first sentence, and then a concluding statement at the end of it. Then that's what gives it a sense of flow, right? So that as you read through the email, it just flows naturally and logically from one idea to the next. Now, you do that by using transitions or linking words that link those ideas together. So transitional words, however, as well, or by opposition, on the contrary, comma, those phrases and words signal a kind of relationship between ideas being presented to the reader. So what it's doing, if you use a transition, is exactly that. You're transitioning from one idea to the next. The way in which you wish for that transition to exist will tell you what kind of statement, what kind of word or phrase that you wish to present. So if it is some kind of temporal relationship, after that, following, comma, a causal relationship as a result, because, these kinds of things, whatever it is that you're writing about, there will be an ideal transitional word or phrase that will indicate to the reader how these two ideas should be linked together. Do they complement one another? Do they oppose one another? Do they follow one another? All these things are really helpful for logical and careful and clear writing. 3, using active verbs most of the time. Active is in the present tense as opposed to the past tense, which tends to be more passive. If you have any kind of issue with verbs, and when we talk about subject and objects and verb, we're not going to get into grammar and sort of nitpicking about it. But if you are using action verbs or active verbs, for the most part, you're writing in the present tense, right? That's really what you're doing. So if the verb describes something that the subject is doing, I am now speaking to you, I have spoken to you, and have been now for the last hour or so making these videos, the verb is active. But if the verb describes something that is being done to the subject, right? Not me doing it, but something that is being done to me, it's considered passive. And a good example is something like here. The customer received 500 widgets. Okay, the customer had this delivery made. It's active. As opposed to 500 widgets were received by the customer. So it's passive also in the sense that where the subject is in the sentence, the first one, it's the very beginning. The subject is the customer, right? The object are the widgets. Here, if it's passive, the object often appears first, or at least in the first half of the statement. Now, again, I don't want to turn this into a grammar lesson, but very quickly, if you are writing with subject-verb at the very beginning, you will tend to write more in the active, the active form. Verbs rather than nouns to carry the weight of the sentence. It makes the sentence clearer, more concise, often shorter too. Here's a good example. The financial advantage of owning this equipment instead of leasing it is 10% after taxes. Okay, but if you turn around and say, okay, what's really important here? Well, it's about owning the equipment. And the first statement, owning the equipment, is kind of in the middle, it's sort of buried in the middle of the sentence with other ideas that are being presented to you. Because there is, the financial advantage, but how is that advantageous? Well, it is by owning the equipment. So start the statement with that, right? That's what you want to say. Owning the equipment rather than leasing it will save us 10% after taxes. Okay, got it. Another one, weak. We will perform an investigation of the problem. Well, that's very lovely. We are going to, we will. Okay, rather than we will investigate the problem. Short, sweet, to the point. And that's the way you wish to write. Business emails, business letters, and memos really suffer from weak writing, from verbosity, we'll say, a lot of verbiage, a lot of clutter. And the first statement up here, the financial advantage of owning this equipment, it's a good example, where instead the key idea you wish to present to that person is not necessarily the advantage, but it's how that advantage is going to be started by simply saying owning that equipment rather than leasing it. There you go. Very simple. Nouns ending with ment, ion, al. Make an adjustment. Just adjust. Reach a conclusion. Conclude. Right? Make a referral. Refer. It's very simple. Right? I will make a referral rather than I will refer. So it shortens the statements, shortens the paragraphs, shortens the sentences as well, and it gets to the point. Now, all of this has to do with tightening up your writing, right? Your business writing, but in fact, any kind of writing. Whether you're writing a case study or writing an essay in one of your electives, tighten up your writing by going through and seeing whether you can simply remove some of the extra words, some of that extra verbiage, right? That kind of clutters up your ideas. Gerunds, which are what's called a continuing present. I am continuing to speak, right? Or I am speaking, as I will be for another 20 minutes or so. Not in this video, but the other one. A gerund is a way to sort of indicate that something is going to continue to occur. And rather than saying this action is going to continue to occur, just put ing. That's what it means, right? This will continue, or this is continuing, right? It's short, it's sweet, but it is a verb tense that allows us to indicate that an action is being performed over a period of time and will continue to. You can also combine sentences, right? Rather than a group of short sentences, you can combine them in certain cases with a comma or with a semicolon or with a dash sometimes. And what happens is your writing, again, is tightened up. And finally, the last one, putting the meaning of your sentence into the subject and verb. What that means is the previous example, where the issue was not necessarily the financial advantage. That's true. But owning the equipment is what's important. So the subject and the verb really, the subject of the sentence may be yourself, but really what matters is this action of owning your equipment. So the meaning of the sentence is structured so that what is most important about that one single sentence occurs as soon as possible, as early in the sentence as possible. You can also change the sentence length and the structure. You could have, let's say, a couple of sentences that are short, and then you follow that up with a sentence with a comma or a semicolon. Short sentences. I have a sentence in my book where I say, short answer, comma, no. Boom, there it is. Is it grammatically correct? Yeah, we can quibble, but at the same time, it's a short, sharp statement. That was what I wanted to do. And there was no other way to do it other than simply to write it as if someone would say it. Short answer, no. And there it was. And that was my transitional statement to go into the next sentence to explain to the reader why, the answer being no was not a good thing. So sometimes you can do something like that if it is strategic, right? It's useful to you. But sentences that are 30 or 40 words, those are very long. There you can break them down, and you can look at it and say, well, how many single ideas do I have in this long 40-word statement? You might have 2 or 3. Well, if you do, as you conclude each one, period. Not a comma, but a period. One statement. And then go through it again. So let's say you've got 3 clear ideas in one sentence. Well, the sentence is not only too long, but it can literally be broken down into 3 individual statements. They all follow each other, but it's just a little bit too much writing to do in that case. Now, another strategy which is really helpful is what's called a parallel structure. When you are writing, you want to be able to look and the structure of your statement, the structure of the paragraph. And here we're going to take a look at this one, and I'll talk about it some more. Okay, what's faulty? Errors can be checked by reviewing the daily exception reports, or note the number of errors you uncover when you match the lading copy with the file copy of the invoice. Parallel. Errors can be checked by reviewing the daily exception report or by noting the numbers of errors you uncovered when you match the lading copy with the file copy. Okay, well, they kind of look exactly the same as I'm reading through them. Okay, let's see if something comes up here. All right, so parallel structure, what that means is if you have, let's say, a group of 3 things. Okay, when you are addressing those 3 things, you should have a statement that refers to each of those single things. I'm just trying to think of an example just in my mind. I tend to do those if I want my writing to be, well, elegant, we'll say, in the sense that it's balanced. So let's say I make a list of 3 ideas or 3 objects that I wish to write about. Let's say that's that. Okay, well, what follows should be a single statement that refers to each one of those items that I've brought up. If I only have 2, or if I make one long sentence, it just looks clunky. So the reader is reading along and sees that I've now identified 3 different objects. In their mind, they're going to expect me to address each one individually. Now, even if it's only one sentence, that's still parallel writing. I've set up a parallel between my 3 items I've just identified, and the parallel is reflected in my 3 individual statements that I used to refer to those items, and I deal with them. This issue is really bad because of this, this, and this. Okay, now if you're going to unpack that a little bit more, you wish to be able to address each one of those this, this, and this. So when you do that, you not only are clear and concise, but it looks balanced because you've introduced an idea, or 3 in this case, and then you've concluded with 3 separate statements. That's parallel writing. Okay, second person you rather than third person. Be careful with those, only because on the one hand, it does personalize the message, but if you have several people that are going to be reading this email, let's say if you CC, let's say 3 other people, so there'll be a total of 4 individuals reading this email, be careful when using the pronoun you, because each person reading it will think that you are referring to them, when in fact, perhaps you might want to refer to them by name. If only one person is reading it, and it is kind of to congratulate them on something, they've won something, their warranty is going to be, acknowledged, and everything is free, and parts of labor, etc. If only one person is reading it, then go ahead and use the pronoun you. It does personalize it, it's true, but it only gets to be a problem when there is the chance another person may be reading it. The other problem too is when we identify people primarily as you. Let's say someone's reading this email 6 months from now. They may not be sure who you is, right? Who is this person? So we want to make sure that we are clear, right, on who it is that we are addressing. So second person, once you begin to participate, funds in your account at the end of each 6 months will automatically be used to buy more unless you turn in a notice of election to exercise purchase rights. Okay, so it's very clear who it is that is, that's being addressed. It is you, the things you need to do or not do in certain cases, and that's fine. But the third person, it makes it sound very almost dispassionate and objective. It doesn't necessarily work. But what happens is the person reading it may not get the message, may not realize that, oh, I've got to do something. So the second one here, once you begin to participate, funds in your account and so on, unless you turn in a particular notice. It identifies the person and what they need to do. Okay, using words that are accurate, appropriate, that are ethical, right? That are not racist or sexist or whatever, and that are familiar. I mean, it's useful, depending on who it is that you're writing to. As it indicates here, a pound, right? A pound could be a unit of weight, could be an animal shelter, could be British money, could be a verb. I mean, you want to make sure that the person understands what you're saying. And that is just really boils down to clear and concise writing. If there is sort of, pre-owned car rather than a used car, it's kind of derogatory, but a pre-owned car, it's the same thing. But there's something about used, like it's worn out, right? As opposed to pre-owned. Oh, that person could have taken care of it, right? It simply was owned by another person. Sales representative rather than salesperson. These are minor, almost quibbling little changes, but there's something about them that just kind of ups your writing just slightly. And pre-owned car versus used car is care. I just noticed it now. Used care. It's supposed to be used car. My mistake. So there is something about words that connote something that might be derogatory or negative. But pre-owned cars is a kind of a nice way around an issue of saying that someone else owned this thing, right? It is a used car. Now here's a really good one. When you are talking about presenting something to people, most of us are familiar with pressure-treated wood. But would you want to be called what it really is, which is arsenic-treated lumber? Like, the word arsenic has got very definite negative connotations. So pressure-treated wood removes the, I guess in this case, the ingredient that makes it pressure-treated, when in fact it's arsenic. Now, these days there's a lot less arsenic in pressure-treated wood, but those kinds of ethical issues, pressure-treated is still correct, but the word arsenic just doesn't appear in the sentence. It calms people down. And finally, the last one, familiar words. Nothing wrong with using just clear language. Send out rather than emit. Exfoliate rather than scrape off dead skin cells. Ugh. So exfoliate kind of sounds scientific, but so is scraping off dead skin cells. It's just kind of the way you want to describe it. And if people are more comfortable or familiar with exfoliating, have at it. Go ahead and use those. Now, finally, technical jargon. Now, this is important for a variety of reasons, and I use this for different classes, certainly the comm classes. But when you are in a field that has a lot of either acronyms or very specific words that are part of that world that technical jargon is fine if you are speaking to another person who is as familiar as you are with the jargon. Because what it does is it's a kind of verbal shorthand, right? That I need some ABS piping. Okay, that's great. If you're a plumber, you know what ABS piping is. The rest of us, sure, does that stand for asbestos or arsenic? Because I don't want any. We don't know what ABS piping is, but somebody who's in the field of plumbing or works in a hardware store should know what ABS piping is. And this is what I mean. Technical jargon sometimes may be things, words that we use quite often, but we stop remembering that people outside that field may not know what it means. So we want to make sure that we're always clear. Now, you can introduce the technical jargon and describe very briefly what it is, and then go on to use it. There's nothing wrong with that. But use it if you know that the reader will understand what you're saying. And again, plain English, there's nothing wrong with it. Again, jargon. Foot the average monthly budget column down to total variable cost, total management fixed cost, total sunk cost. I have no idea what that means. No idea, and I only have a PhD. So better. Add the figures. Oh, okay, that's a word again, right? Add the figures in the average monthly budget column for each category to determine the total variable costs, total management fixed costs, and total sunk costs. Okay, notice again, not only was it clear, but what do I have to do? Add the figures, right? Oh, that's it. And not only that, it starts the sentence, the very first thing I read in the sentence, add the figures. Very straightforward. So that's pretty well it. 10 ways to write more effective business letters and memos and emails. And I shall be back very shortly with the last set of slides for this week.